Elation and jubilation gamers from all around the world. I am Luchan and this is the World Gamer Show. And today I have a very special guest here with me, Brett Douville, game developer with an incredible career that had a huge impact on some of the best games ever made, such as Skyrim, Fallout 3 and 4, and even cult classics from the Star Wars universe like Republic Commando and Starfighter. Thank you very much for being here, Brett, and welcome.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've worked on quite some Star Wars games like Republic Commando specifically and Starfighter. Correct me if I'm wrong if there are more.
And Jedi Starfighter, which was the sequel.
Right. And were you already a Star Wars fan when you joined LucasArts, or did you join more because you liked all the classic point-and-clicks adventure games like Monkey Island,
Yeah, I joined more because I enjoyed the history of the point and clicks. Although I did like both Star Wars and Star Trek growing up. I mean, Star Trek was on TV every day or whatever, once a week. I don't remember, but and I had seen Star Wars in the theater in 1977. We were at the beach, and my father took me and at least one of my sisters to see it. We were very young. I mean, I was in fact, that first time I saw it, I think I fell asleep. But it was like a rainy day at the beach, and we decided to go see a movie instead and cool off a little bit. And but I had seen Star Wars quite a lot. I remember being blown away, by Empire when that was out. By the surprise at the end, and I don't want to spoil it, in case anybody's not seen Empire Strikes Back. But it was a big deal. I was super excited to see, Return of the Jedi, which, I remember seeing as well in the theater. I was a fan of those, but I wasn't going there because it was, the Star Wars company. In fact, up until that point, there weren't a lot of Star Wars games made by LucasArts. It was really because of the prequels that it kind of got into high gear. There was a sort of mandate from the ranch, from Lucasfilm Ranch, Skywalker Ranch, which was where George did his work, that we would make we're going to have this. We need a pod racing game. We need a game with the spaceship. We need play the movie game, and there was kind of this like we have to do that, and then that kind of opened up the gates for Star Wars. I mean, it had started 5 or 6 years before with things like Dark Forces, and then the Jedi Knight and things like that. But it really kind of got going in earnest. When I got there, and as LucasArts made the transition to 3D. So I originally, like I said, kind of went there. Tim Schafer was working on Grim Fandango at the time. I was really excited about that game. But by the time I interviewed there, he had his whole team and was about to go into, the last kind of phases of development. They were in full production. And when I was there, I interviewed with Darren Stinnett, who had made Dark Forces, and he and I hit it off pretty well, and he ended up hiring me to do the AI and the gameplay programming for Starfighter.
Nice.
I've got a standee there in the background.
I could say my eyes lay straight on that.
Yeah. I've got a Skyrim special edition back over that shoulder too, but
that is a little bit too tiny for
it's a little smaller.
Yeah, eyes.
This is kind of a long room, so
all the way back.
Yeah.
And personally, I personally am a big fan of Republic Commando, and I've even devoured the fantastic making of videos. And in one of them, it was very peculiar because they show that you actually received training as soldier by real expert, by real soldiers or ex-marine or whatnot. Did you actually get to participate in those training sessions? Because you weren't there in the making of videos.
No, I actually wasn't on the project at the beginning. They needed help on Full Throttle 2. They needed, gameplay engineers and things like that. And, I had done Starfighter, and then I was the lead programmer on Jedi Starfighter, which was kind of, if it had been a PC game, primarily, it would have been basically an expansion pack. But it was another full kind of game. And the idea was to kind of get something more out of that engine, which we had spent a lot of money on to build, because it was built from scratch. So I was working anyway on Full Throttle 2, and that project ran into trouble. I mean, it was basically way too expensive. They kind of like didn't do enough pre-production, and so they were still figuring things out. And they ended up needing me back over in Republic Commando. So I wasn't there at the very beginning when they started figuring things out like that. I think in those videos you see mostly a lot of the animators, who really had to understand how they were going to move. And I don't know if any programmers are in those shots. I haven't watched those videos in a long time. I know Darren would have been there. He was the project leader at the time. He would later become the executive producer, and Chris Williams would become the project lead. And then, I'm sure Tim was there as well, and I don't remember if he's in any of the videos either. Tim Longo was the creative director, my co-host on the podcast. So I wasn't there, but I do definitely remember, watching that and hearing tales of them, being trained and talking about like how you move, as a team, in those environments. We call them squads usually in the games, but I was informed when I showed the game at E3, we had a Marine who kept coming back again and again and again to play, and he would say, 4 men is a team, a squad is whatever, 5 teams or something like that. He was very like, you can't call it a squad. I was like, well, in Star Wars it's a squad, but
Nice.
But I'm not going to tell a Marine that, because
hands up.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. This is very nice, previous stuff, I'd say. In the same making of videos, it said that George Lucas himself is the one that gave the idea to give different colors to the commandos, and in video you can see that the in-development footage shows that originally they were basically all white, just like the regular, clones. And George Lucas is actually a little infamous for being so very protective with the Star Wars franchise, or at least he was, good old times.
Back when he still owned it, yeah.
So I was wondering, was this true also for the games you worked on, such as Republic Commando, Starfighter, Jedi, and whatnot? Did he sort of get in the way much? Did you have to push for many things? How much of his influence is there in the game?
He hadn't really been involved in other games at LucasArts that much. He kind of wanted the company to not, to make a little money, and it was kind of like, go figure out, how games are, how stories are told in games. That's why they started out as storytelling, and partly why they didn't have any Star Wars games for so long. I think Dark Forces was the first one that was done by LucasArts. Anyway, so that was actually the first one, and my recollection is that was actually the involvement of the president at the time, who wanted to get licensing and George Lucas more involved with the company, because George is a great storyteller, and let's try to bring him in and make him more aware. I mean, the game had originally started taking place all on one day on Geonosis. Like, that was the original high concept pitch, was like, they're clones, it's one day, and in this war, from the movie. And it kind of, talking with marketing and things like that was a hard thing to sell at the time. Like, you normally want multiple environments, and it's the whole marketing question to figure out there. So we kind of ditched that pretty quick. But having the clones be clones, and in fact, they had, they weren't all voiced by Tamura Morrison originally, but they were Tamura Morrison and then 3 sound-alikes, so they all basically sounded the same. And even though the story didn't change significantly when George got involved, there was a lot of additional writing. All the banter system, which was done by John Hancock, who was like our lead AI programmer, and also did a ton of audio work. He came in and said, well, this is, first of all, it's not very, there's not a lot of lightness, and most war movies have some, dark humor, at least. And you can't really tell them apart. But argument was like, well, you made them clones, like I don't know what we're supposed to do with that. But it was true. He was like, well, you don't have to. You can make them different in some way if you want. And he suggested Robin Williams for one of the voices to make it a little lighter. And we were like, well, we can't afford Robin Williams, but we can take that to heart. And we took that to heart and made it more humorous. I do remember at the time after we got the feedback, we really pushed back because we were like, wow, because we were very close to ship. This was right after E3. We came out, originally we were going to come out that fall, I think. So this would have been, 2004, maybe June of 2004, July of 2004. We got this feedback and, we're like, well, we're going to have to push it. It will have to be, Christmas or later. It might go into next year, maybe still in the fiscal year, which was the end of March for LucasArts. But that's a big change, right? We have to re-record all of the dialogue. We have to rewrite a lot of the sort of incidental dialogue. we have to do something with these models to differentiate them. Luckily, Jeremy Talbot, who was the technical artist, or one of the technical artists, he kind of came up with the idea of doing these paints, across their faces and things like that to distinguish them. And then we had Mike Stemley come in and do some writing. Also Ryan Kaufman, who had been on Full Throttle 2 as I think the lead writer there, had come in, or maybe the creative director. I can't remember what Ryan's role was. They came in and added a lot of additional dialogue. It was actually really good for the project overall because it gave us more time to also make it more Star Wars-y. We had an offsite around that time, June or July. Darren looked and said, well, we've had to add time to the schedule for these reasons. What else can we do to make the game feel, make the game better? We have an opportunity here to take the game from being, whatever level of game it is, to take it and maybe get 5 points better in reviews or whatever, because we have this extra time. We took a day and just took the whole team away from the computers, away from the distractions of the internet and whatever, and had a bunch of brainstorms, and everybody, marketing was there, and QA. I think we had a finance person, and of course everybody who was on the development team. And then we just mixed everybody up, so every group had an engineer and a level designer and, maybe an artist or an animator or both. And all those people kind of talked over, the ways that they saw Star Wars or this game. And it helped a lot. So we got a lot out of that feedback. The feedback led to more time on the project. More time on the project led to a lot of, really good stuff. In particular, the middle levels on I forget the name of the ship, but that middle section where it's kind of a ghost ship became much more Star Wars feeling. It was a little too clean before that, a little too, I don't know. There was something about it. It didn't have enough kind of like weird bits kind of sticking to stuff that Star Wars tends to have. It was more like a cleaner, like Buck Rogers type thing or something. It was not quite the same. Didn't have the right feel.
Well, I liked certainly the level variety there, so I'm there with you. One thing that I didn't expect at first is that also the band Ash appears in the game, is featured. And how did this collaboration happen? Can you give some details?
Yeah, we were a little surprised by it too. That was given to us more than a decision by the team. That one, I think we actually fought against more. And the reason was, it didn't, we had this really adaptive score, that was, really based on, sort of music cues and stingers. And of course we had the whole written music and everything, or the language rather, for the main ancient Mandalorian or whatever. And so it was kind of a and then rock and roll. Some of the reviews even said, well, it has this rock and roll soundtrack. We're like, no, it doesn't. There's one song in the credits, and now that colored your whole experience of the game. What I suspect happened, I don't have any real knowledge of this, but I believe that for Full Throttle 2, I think, had gotten far enough along that they had basically a music deal to license music for that. And when that game fell apart, they probably were like, well, let's take what we've put in and get something appropriate, and we'll make that deal still happen because we've already given you some amount of money or whatever. That's my guess. I think that's how that happened. I don't really know Ash. I mean, I'm sure they're great. But a lot of us were just like, okay, it's very different from the rest of the music of the game. It was, we had some Williams stuff, had all that kind of classical Star Wars feel, and then this rock and roll song at the end about clones, which was just very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into the band, and it was nice to see them, but it was it really stood out, maybe for not the right reasons.
No.
I think there was a music video clip. I think that was also it was mostly marketing, as you basically deals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Still, I don't think it hurt the game too much because it was put at the, in the credits
at the end.
But it's true what you said. I mean, then if
this might be the last thing you hear. Yeah, so it is a little strange.
From that.
Yeah. I don't even remember seeing. I don't remember seeing the credits, or that video while we were in development. I might have, but I don't remember it. We were so busy trying to get the game out, and the company was also going through sort of a constriction at that time, getting smaller, to kind of figure out their strategy moving forward and to, save some money while they were doing that. Because I think there were basically a handful of projects. A couple came out that didn't do that well. So they cut some stuff and they kind of resized, and so we were working really, really hard. That was a tough end of project.
Right, I bet. Can you tell us a curious fact, anecdote, funny fact about the development of one of your games? Something that you didn't tell anybody else yet.
You asked me this, and I had an idea, and now I'm trying to remember what it was. So I apologize. I should have written it down because I'm terrible at thinking of these things. There's definitely there's always things that you cut from games. So now I'll just think of something from Republic Commando that are always kind of surprising. I guess I can talk about a couple sort of LucasArts development things. But we had this idea for a Rancor-like creature for Kashyyyk or Kashyyyk or however that's pronounced, the Wookiee planet. And the idea was it would be this big beast that kind of came up out of the ground. It was kind of a boss monster, but it wasn't a game that really had any boss fights, and everything that we made for the game was very, like an AI that you could drop into any environment. We might have to do something in the environment so it knows how to get around, but you could basically drop it in. And we didn't have a lot of things that were like, you do it once, so we had this one thing that was going to have all these physics attacks. And so we looked at that, and we looked at our schedule, and we said, we could spend 6 weeks on this. It might still not be fun, and we'd end up cutting it anyway. It'd be better to cut it now. So that's a thing too. Star Wars Republic Commando almost had co-op. It was planned to have co-op. I cut that from that game because there was no way we could have a good co-op experience. I don't think that's necessarily news, but it's definitely something I've done, and I've been getting a hard time about it from Tim Longo ever since. And then, one thing that I did early on that I probably would not do again is that this is one of those things you have to learn while you're making things. I don't know, maybe I would do it again. I have to think about it. But the ships in Starfighter, all of them fly the game the same way the player does, in the sense that they send inputs down to the flight model like it's a joystick, or twin sticks in the case of a PlayStation controller. And what that meant was, originally the game started as a roll and pull flight model. So, roll the plane, pull back to get to actually turn. It became more arcadey but all the AIs still fly the ships the original way. So if you play that game, you're sort of flying this way, while they're kind of flying, and they'll bank and turn this way, and you're like, so you're always seeing sort of the top or bottom of the ship as they kind of fly away from you, which ended up working out pretty well from that respect. But it was because they flew the game like a pilot would with an actual virtual stick. So those are a few things I can sort of think of the top of my head.
I definitely didn't know them, so thank you very much for sharing these. And that really wraps it up. I want to thank again Brett for accepting my invitation. What a great pleasure is to have you here. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed our chat. Your very candid answers. It really made me a happy man. That's what I mean.
Well, I'm glad.
And of course, guys, keep playing all these awesome games he worked on. They made history, and I'm glad that Brett took to be with us today, sharing that history. So really, thank you again.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And guys, before you go, just a reminder to like, subscribe, do all the yada yada. This way I can bring you more content, better content, just like this interview here. And you will be up to speed with my latest videos, so it's a win-win, it's free, hit the subscribe button. But really, I just want to thank you so much for sticking to the end of this video. I will be seeing you in my next one, but until then, stay safe, play safe, world gamers.